Hey there, it's Carrie Kenner. Welcome to the weekly vlog. Well, it turns out I have a lot to say about families, I guess, and my audience seems to be very interested in families as well because I got so many comments from people letting me know how thinking about family of origin really stirred some things up for them, the ways in which their families have contributed to them, good or bad, in terms of how they are in the world, and how they come to grips with their family legacy and the future that they want to create. So thanks for all your comments. It really lets me know what things you're interested in and what things to keep vlogging and blogging about and having a conversation with you. I appreciate it. So continuing on with the saga of families, last weekend was my sister's birthday, and as my gift to her, I took her away for the weekend so that we could just get away and relax and chill, but also to do a little bit of work on our family of origin and specifically to look at some events that had happened when we were kids that still bothered us to this day. So in addition to being a doula trainer and a marketing and business consultant and grandmother to thousands, I'm also a copywriter, and I have a gig with an organization that creates continuing education for psychotherapists. And I'm the one who writes the sales pages and the email series every time we launch a course. And in the process of doing this writing, I have to learn about our presenters and their work. So I learn all this cool stuff about psychotherapy, and it's a really great perk of being a copywriter. One of our upcoming courses is by a presenter named Dr. Tion Dayton, and she is an expert on psychodrama and sociometrics. And these are psychotherapy modalities that are used to help people kind of tap into experiences that have happened in their past, typically negative or traumatic ones. But some of these exercises involve helping one's adult self dialogue with their child self and vice versa. Or there's exercises where you might do a role play with another person or with an imaginary person, or you might put things on the floor and walk towards the places where you're kind of being drawn to or where you gravitate towards. There are all different ways to kind of embody, to act out the situations that cause us distress at some point in our lives and see if we can understand the ways that it impacted us when we were young and new ways to be in relationship with those experiences as adults. So in preparation for this course, I was reading Dr. Dayton's book, Sociometrics, and I was learning about these exercises, and they looked relatively easy to do. Things like drawing on a piece of paper to map out the people who were involved in a certain incident, or creating a timeline of significant events in your life. You know, things that were very doable. They didn't seem super complex. And to someone like me, they actually looked kind of fun. So I asked my sister, hey, would you be interested in doing these in our weekend away together? And she was very eager because we both really like doing inner exploration work. We both have seen therapists or are seeing therapists. It's stuff we're comfortable with, and we kind of like digging a little bit. So armed with the book and pieces of paper and markers and all sorts of things, we went away for the weekend. And we spent a little over 2 hours doing about 4 of these exercises. We focused on kind of the breadth of our life. So instead of focusing on specific incidents, we started out with just like, what are current behaviors that we experience? What are the main influences, both people and institutions, things like schools or community groups or whatever, throughout our life that really kind of influenced who we were? We did a big timeline of significant events that had happened in our lives. And then we acted out a few role plays. And in these role plays, you have the choice to either be the person that you were in it, play yourself, or you can play the antagonist, the person who caused you this distress or harm. And you can kind of guide the other person to play the role that you want them to in the way that you want them to. And then you just kind of do it. And what's amazing about this is that even though you may not know anything of the situation the person is talking about, you can really quickly kind of drop into the experience, the character, the energy of it, and it's a really useful tool. And many people know about this in group work called family constellations. So this is a version of that. It's similar to family constellations work, if you're familiar with that. The thing is that no matter how many people are doing this with you, you could be doing it with an empty chair sitting across from you. No matter whether you know the situation, no matter where you are in life, it's transformative to get a redo. So my sister and I did a few of these role plays, and no matter what the situation was, it either brought up tears of relief from being unburdened of something that we had been carrying for decades, or just the simple satisfaction of finally getting to say what you couldn't say the first time that it happened. And what struck me is how simple these exercises were to do. Everyone should have access to these. These are things we should learn about in school, at work, in our families. These are skills that should be taught to children when they're young so they don't get stuck in these situations and then have a lifetime of repetitive memories of things that cause them pain. These things are accessible. They are available to us. There's so much pain and suffering in the world right now, and not enough therapists to help all the people who are struggling. In the process of learning about different approaches to therapy, I've learned a lot about different modalities that people use to treat mental illness. I've learned about inner parts work and the different ways that the different aspects of ourselves are trying to keep us safe and help us survive. I've learned about how experiences reside in our body, and just talking or thinking about them is not going to typically resolve them. I've learned why painful childhood events are harder to treat than hard things that happen to adults. And I've learned a really cool thing that you can heal your relationship with your parents by working on your relationship with your own children. But the most profound thing I've learned is that everyone has the capacity to heal. There's this thing called neuroplasticity, and neuroplasticity means that our brains and our nervous system and our minds and thoughts and behaviors, they're not cast in stone. They're not stuck. We tend to think they are, and the way that we lead our lives certainly makes it appear that way. But we actually have the capacity to rewire our brains and our nervous system for different patterns of behavior. Now, it can be tricky to do this. It's not something you can just decide to do and then, bingo, it's done. What that means is that we don't have to continue or repeat old patterns that don't serve us or others anymore. They're not cast in stone, but we may have to do a lot of work to change them. I think of the process as similar to working with clay. Clay is one of those substances that changes based on the environment that it's in. In some states, it's malleable and soft, pliable and smooth, and in other places, it's hard and rigid and cutting. You have to have the right conditions or create them to get clay to do what you want it to do. If you want it to be pliable, you need to warm it up, infuse it with water, work with your hands, and love on it a bit. If you want it to be hard and rigid, you have to let it dry out. You can blast it in a hot oven for hours or leave it somewhere to languish for years without any moisture. When I was a ceramic artist, one of my favorite things was to take an old block of dried out clay, something that the average person would say, well, that's useless and ruined. I would put it in a bucket of water. Within a day or two, its elasticity and vitality was restored. I'd still have to put a lot of elbow grease into working the water into all the parts of the clay, but once I did, I could make a work of art out of it. Another thing I liked to use was slurry. Slurry is clay that's been mixed with water till it reaches a consistency like heavy cream. I would pour the slurry into a mold for a plate or a bowl or a picture frame, and then wait a few hours. The mold would draw the excess moisture out of the slurry and leave behind a firm clay vessel for me to paint or glaze and fire. So similar to clay, We need to know how to make our brains and bodies more malleable or how to shore ourselves up to stand strong, because life needs both of those things. The state of the world is rife with trauma and war and violence and anger and hatred. Ideally, we learn within our families how to navigate those challenges of life. But unfortunately, many people are buried alive with negativity in their family surroundings. We all have the capacity to change our attitudes, our beliefs, and our behaviors to do better and be better in the world, to forge new family patterns, create new neural connections, and become stronger, healthier humans. My mission as a doula, mother, grandmother has always been to create a better world with healthier families filled with heart-centered humans that create joyful lives. Want to join me? Here are 3 things you can do this week. Number 1, choose an old family pattern that you'd like to change. But remember, you can't change others, so this is something you have to decide that you're going to do differently. Number 2, tell a child how wonderful they are and that you love them. This is especially powerful to do if you are not that child's parent. Number 3, learn more about neuroplasticity and the ability to heal trauma in yourself and with others. Thanks for making this world a better place.